Rotary is a service organization here in town. In fact, we're calling ourselves Erie Rotary 2.0. Erie Rotary has been involved in Erie for many years. They've helped to start a variety of wonderful different projects and things that they do, but a lot of the people were moving away and honestly dying off. So it was time to rejuvenate Rotary, and we're excited about what we're doing. And a lot of what we're doing is something just like tonight. We had one of our members, in fact, he's going to be our timekeeper, Marty. He asked about a forum. Do you guys know of any live forums that are going on? I said, yes. The chamber is working with the League of Women Voters. And then I found out a week later that the League of Women Voters and the chamber one was going to go online. And so there was a lot of disappointment, and that's when we decided literally that we would like to be to host one and try to get it out there. We are, as Rotary, a non-political organization. We do not fall on either sides. In fact, many people involved in organizations are involved in different political parties. When we come together, we set that aside. We're here to work with each other to serve the community. In fact, one of our mottos is service above self. And so our aim is to be a servant here in the town of Erie. And we're really glad that we can be engaged in this. Another one that's been a big push this year has been People of Action. And so we've wanted to be able to respond to needs and move on those needs quickly. And so even though we're small, we'd love to have you. Rotary is open to anybody. Even though we're small, we want to jump up and take opportunity to fill the gap. And that's what we've done today. And so we're glad that we can partner with Calvary. Calvary has made their facilities available for us, which is wonderful because not only did we not have to worry about setting everything up, the table is great up here, we can have it recorded, and there will be recording available at the end. So we're glad that we can be a part of this and that you all can be with us. If you ever want to learn more about Rotary, we have meetings on Thursday evenings. Currently, they're meeting at Christos down on Briggs Street. We also, on April 23rd, have a large gala event, and we're going to honor some of our Erie stars. There's a police officer and a fireman and a few others out there that we're going to be honoring at that event, and so we'd love to have you come and join us and be a part of that. So welcome. We're really glad that you can be here. And now it's time to really focus on our candidates. These men and women that are sitting up here have chosen to serve their community. And because of that, we're like, boy, we're hand in glove here. We get to work together. We're glad about that. And you know what? Before we go any further, we really do need to applaud these people because they are coming up and offering to put themselves out there. And in our town of Erie, when you say you're going to try to do something and it has any type of political nature, be ready to be attacked on all sorts of sides. And these people are saying, I'm ready and willing to do it because I believe I have a vision and I have the skill set necessary to help improve my community. For that, I think we should at least give them a round of applause. So the format tonight will be, we'll ask a question. They will all have 1 minute to answer it. We are going to rotate who gets to start and who gets to be the last person. We solicited questions for this past week on Facebook. We had 70 some odd questions submitted, and we're only going to go through 50 of them tonight. So be with us. No, I'm sorry, we're not. We're only going to probably have time for about 9 or 10 of them. We will end at 7:30. We have no intention to keep this going too long. I hope that if you ask one of the questions, that your question may be asked. I'll be very honest with you, a lot of those questions were fairly loaded. We tried to make sure that we drove a middle line and one that we could ask that question that everybody could be a part of giving the answer. So that was our aim in trying to do this. We're trying to keep this as fair as possible for everyone. And that way it'll also be good for everybody out here to be able to hear the answer for that. So let me see. Oh, one last thing I do want to again say thank you to Calvary. They had to jump up quickly to do this. And they opened up, they changed their schedule around a little bit, and so they made it in too. So I don't see Thomas here. Oh, there he is. He is here. So Thomas, thank you very much. So, okay, with that, they will have 1 minute to give a response. We have our timekeeper up here, Marty. When there's 15 seconds left, he's going to show them a card that says 15 seconds, and then there will be the stop. And when the stop comes up, they get to finish their sentence. So be gracious, okay? And out here, please don't, let's hold down. Let's be very supportive people, like Erie should be, for people who are willing to come up here and serve us. So with that, we're going to start right here. Kelly, you get to start us off.
Hello? Oh, it's on. All right, fantastic. Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Kelly Zuniga. My family, my husband and I, Miguel there in the front, and my two daughters, a 12 and a 4-year-old, have lived in Erie, a couple of us, for 9 years in the Kenosha Farm neighborhood. I have a PhD in urban planning, and I used to teach at a university, but now I'm a park planner for the city of Loveland. I've done quite a bit of community service, started a community garden in Kenosha Farm, fostered 12 children, and I've most recently been on the Planning Commission for the past 6 years. I've been the chair for the last 2. The reason that I'm running for mayor, my motivation for this is that I feel like the town leadership has been out of step with local priorities, and I'd like to bring it back. As mayor, I'll work every day to keep Erie family friendly and to keep costs low for residents, to keep our neighborhoods safe, and to attract new employers. Thank you, and please vote for Kelly Zuniga.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Justin Brooks. I am an Erie resident for 13 years now. My wife and I, Miosha, we've been married for 19 years. We have 4 children that we've raised here in Erie. We live in the Grandview subdivision. I've been an aerospace and defense professional for 20 years. I've also been a landlord and a business owner for 20 years. I have led very large and complex teams to keep our country safe and also solve various technical problems. I've managed budgets and schedules, and I understand how to work in coalition with a number of entities, including government agencies. About 3 months ago, I was appointed by the Board of Trustees to be a board trustee myself for the town of Erie. I'm very excited to serve my community. I've worked diligently in the Colorado community as a scoutmaster, as a community leader, and an activist for equity and fairness, and I believe that that's important to restore the sense of community that existed when I came to Erie. So I asked for you to support me in this election. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christian Van Wittenberg. I've been a trustee for the town of Erie for the last 4 years. I've lived in Erie and Vista Ridge for 15 years with my 2 teenage daughters that attend Erie High School. Public service is one of the most difficult yet rewarding endeavors I've ever embarked upon. And it really is my privilege as a current trustee to seek re-election in order to fulfill a number of the really important visions that the town has set out over the last 4 years, looking at projects like Town Center and Westerly and the Erie Gateway, and the sustainability efforts that we've undertaken, the land acquisitions that we've made with the Wise Farms and Schofield Farms projects, the expansion of Erie Community Park and Coal Creek Park. I love Erie. It's an amazing place, and it is my privilege to continue to serve you as trustee for the town.
Hello, my name is Andrew Sawish. I'm a candidate for trustee. I've been a resident here for the past 6 years. In my time, I have also been a planning commissioner for the last 2, a member of the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Steering Committee for the past 2 as well. What I've seen firsthand is that the planning necessary for the town's growth has been not what we'd consider up to par. We have issues with our infrastructure where they're strained, they're at max capacity. We have some budget deficits where we have some specific funds where they were at very sizable amounts about 2 to 3 years ago, and they're dwindling down to date. As well as economic vitality, where we have been promised for years all these various places that we're going to be able to shop, play, eat, all these retail establishments, and yet we have nothing to speak for it. So what I like to do is set a plan for our growth and outline exactly the strategies how we're going to get there. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Bear. I'm running for trustee. My husband and I have been married for 25 years. We were high school sweethearts and grew up on the same street. We have 4 kiddos that we have raised in Colorado, and we've lived in Erie for about the last 6 years. I'm the chairman of the board for the Front Range Center for Assault Prevention, and I bring 17 years of board experience as well as community organizing. It's important to me that we're building a culture in Erie where people feel safe, seen, heard, and valued. I think this is foundational for moving our community forward. It's also really important to me that town government is transparent and accessible to the community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Hoback. I've been an Erie resident for 20 years. I have an accounting and finance background. I have put 2 of my kids, or guided 2 of my 2 kids through Erie schools, K through 12. I'm running for trustee because I think I bring a good skill set with the accounting and finance background. Erie is on an incredibly strong financial footing, and I want to continue to guide its financial success, and I would like to see us accelerate and build out, town center. I'm excited about that, about Erie Gateway, the Erie Air Park, which is a hidden gemstone that we have, and Old Town as well. I would like to accelerate as well the synergy that we have with the new planning director and Downtown Erie Business Association, Erie Economic Development Council, and the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
First, Andy, thank you for organizing this, and thanks to church for hosting. It's a beautiful facility. I'm really glad to be part of a live event, a live debate, and see everybody here. I'm Jeff Haverkate. I moved to Erie about 6.5 years ago. I'm married to my wife, Tara. We have 3 young kids, 8, 6, and 4. I moved out here in high school to Colorado. I went to Colorado State. I got a degree in finance. Then I went to work for some big companies, and I got my MBA while I was doing that. About 5 years ago, we decided we wanted to forge our own path and start our own business, and we wanted to do it here in Erie because we have kids here and we love Erie. We think it's a great place to be. So we bought some land, we drew up some plans, we got them approved, we built a building, and we continue to operate that business here in Erie today. It's a child care facility. So I hope my answers here tonight provide some conviction and things that I'm passionate about and why I'm running. And real quick, those things are, I want to represent kids and families and choice. I want to focus on Erie and the issues that are important to Erie, support small businesses and bring in more of them, and then have less government regulation and intervention. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ryan Kenward. I want to thank everyone for being here today. It's great to see you all in person. Thanks to the Rotary Club and to the church as well for sponsoring, or not sponsoring, but holding us here. I moved to Erie 3 years ago with my wife and my son from South Korea. We have since had a second son. I'm an Air Force veteran, prior intelligence analyst. I've held multiple senior leadership roles in the aerospace industry to include program management, engineering department management, and now I do business development. I have a bachelor's degree in computer information systems and an MBA in international business. I love the town. I think it's a great place to raise a family. What concerns me, though, is cost of living. As inflation, energy costs rise, and the dollar grows weaker. I'm concerned with how do we continue forward. We need to be a smaller and agile government. We need to be competitive with our neighbors to bring in more primary employers. I've had the honor and privilege of serving my country, and now I ask for the honor and privilege of serving our town. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to question number 1. First question. What do you believe should be the top 2 or 3 priorities of the next board and mayor? That's not coordinated, right? No, that's the guideline. So, Raphael, go ahead to the next slide. Oh, and they do not come in one at a time. Darn, I had it all sequenced. All right, so go back to the first question. Other direction. What do you believe should be the top 2 or 3 priorities of the next board or for you as a mayor? And Justin, you can start us off and we'll go all the way around.
Okay. So 1 minute. There's a lot for 2 or 3 top priorities. So I'd say that the cost of living has been rising rapidly. The cost of housing is outpaced the pay of the wages of people who live here. So that is a top priority, to try to figure out ways to create a way for middle-income people, that's people who make $60,000 to $130,000, to be able to afford to live in Erie, because currently they cannot. The second priority, I would say, is to put out a more comprehensive plan of how to obtain home rule. I believe that's a way to restore the power of government to the voters of Erie, as opposed to having the state dictate what the regulations for this town are. So that's a very important thing. And I'd say third is creating or recreating a sense of community that we had prior to COVID. It seems like we have fallen apart as a community in sense of division around this topic. So I look forward to restoring community and restoring the town that I moved to 13 years ago.
My first priority will be to reestablish downtown Erie as a place for us to go to eat and entertain ourselves and go and do some business. It's so important for us to get out of the COVID-19 pandemic and restore that nexus of commerce and identity to Erie. After that's been reestablished, I really want the board to focus on the development at Town Center, that we have a lot of cooperation from local developers and the business community, and really good interest from residents in order to get Town Center up and going, so that we can bring a diversity of commerce, a grocery store, and other opportunities. And finally, I believe the transition to home rule is critical for us to grow up as a town, so that we can establish a form of government that reflects the unique nature of Erie, while standing on the shoulders of other municipalities that have gone to home rule and found that to be effective for growing into our next phase of development.
So there's 3 specific items that I have been campaigning on. They're all central around manageable growth, sustainable infrastructure, financial accountability, economic vitality. Really, when I look at the 3 most important things, those are all central themes. However, really it's about planning. That is the number 1 and only goal that our town should have for the next 2, 5, 10, 20 years out. First, assess where we are today, then move on to where we are going to, and then eventually get to the where we will be. So that means assess, what are we currently at in terms of our infrastructure? What does our current work plan look like? What is town staff working on? And then we say where we're going, where we actually start saying, okay, what are the items that we actually have to set up for the next year, the next 2 years? And then from there also have then the comprehensive plan, all these master plans, as well as financial forecasting, which our town does not do, so that we can be a step ahead of where we are currently instead of being behind the schedule.
For me, priorities would be making sure that we are looking at our plans and making sure that we are supporting balanced growth. And that includes diversity in housing, and making sure we have a plan for inclusionary housing. And I hope we'll get to talk about that more about that this evening. I think this serves to support our businesses and ensures that we are competitive in recruiting and retaining important employees in the job market. I also think one of the main priorities will be to engage the public in a really aggressive and transparent education process around home rule. I feel like that's a really important next step for Erie's maturity and growth. And this is where that foundational value of making sure that we're building a culture in Erie where people are safe, seen, heard, and valued comes into play, so that we are able to engage and make sure that people can come to the town with their concerns.
As I mentioned in my introduction, I have a business background, and so growing business in Erie is going to be an area of focus for me, and I believe that should be a top priority to build out our sustainable growth for years to come, and that will involve not only the projects that we have with Town Center and Erie Gateway, but creating diversity in the types of businesses that we have here in Erie. I also agree that attainable housing is going to be a major issue that needs to start being addressed. It's very complicated, and it's going to take a while to get there. It's going to be a partnership with developers and businesses and the town. And we need a home where, a town where, first responders and teachers and others can afford to live. Third, I do believe Erie residents deserve the right to vote on home rule and learn about it and decide for themselves. Thank you.
I'd first like to know that the board is going to respect and defend kids and families. So that means taking Boulder County's extreme rules and imposing them on all of Erie is harmful for the kids. The kids need to stay in school. It's harmful for the families. They need their kids in school so they can go to work. It's harmful for businesses, and it's very divisive and controversial, and it's a big part of why this town has been so split. So I think the board should defend kids and keep them in school. Secondly, commercial development and revenue generation. I think it all goes back to this. It will help us not tax the residents or impose burdens on the residents and average people and common people as there's inflation and all these challenges in daily lives. So if we can, Erie's got a nice location, we got views, we got people, we've got amazing neighborhoods, and we've got space to do all these wonderful things. So there's no reason we shouldn't have more businesses coming here, which will increase to the commercial tax base, which will give us options to do all the great things we want to do that will benefit everybody in Erie.
Okay, so I think first and foremost, cost of living is one of my biggest concerns. We need to diversify our economy. We can't run based off of impact fees and e-commerce sales tax forever. As we grow to 65,000 people in the future, it really matters what type of revenue sources we have. So we need to start working on that much more aggressively. That leads into my second goal, which is balancing growth. We need more primary employers. We need to look multiple years ahead instead of just looking at 1 year at a time. And then I think the third one is ensuring the government represents the will of the people. I understand that we are quite divided at times. National politics has made things even more divisive as time goes on. But it's important that we remember we're all neighbors, we're all in this together, and we need to find ways to compromise and move forward. So I think that a government that listens to the people, acknowledges their concerns, and then finds a way to work together, but also understands our place, that really, really will make a big difference.
Hi, yeah, I get to answer last on this one. I think the first and foremost, we need to update our visioning. We need to really have a sense of where we're going and where we want to be. So I think that would be the first priority for me, is looking at our long-term planning and what it is we're trying to accomplish. And for me, one of the things that I'm trying to accomplish in my candidacy is to keep the cost of living low for our current residents, for the people who live here, for families, for people who are on fixed income and who are in our service sector. Part of that is diversifying the economy, so bringing in new business, but I think part of that, being friendlier to our families and being friendlier to businesses is very similar. Removing red tape, removing fees, trying to make it so that they can operate here and continue to live here. So I'll stop.
Okay, our second question. Sorry, you all, I'm trying to see if we can get this just to come up one at a time. So, yeah, some people might have eagle eyes up here in the front, but fortunately all of you can read the question. There appear to be conflicting stories on crime in Erie, ranging from us being one of the safest small towns in the state to us having an increasing problem of crime that is getting serious. What do we need to do to assist our police so our town can remain one of the safest towns in Colorado? So, Christian, you get to start this.
It is my distinct pleasure to start off with this. Statistics about crime are easy to take out of context. Depending on where you look, Erie is either number 9 or 11 in terms of the safest municipalities in Colorado. Colorado is number 1 for auto thefts in the country. Colorado is number 1 for porch pirates in the country. So when you look at large municipalities in Colorado like Aurora and Denver and Lakewood and such, inevitably the increased crime, property crime that comes from those areas extends into Erie. So yes, Some segments of property crime in Erie are up. However, since the peak in 2020, which is what some of the websites that report up about like generally like A or B plus kind of grades, please look at the Erie's annual report from 2021. In most categories other than property crime, those stats are down. I appreciate so much the effort of our chief of police in hiring an amazing police force, and I look forward to working with them to address these issues.
So if we look at the way that the crime statistics are run, it's based on per capita. Obviously, we've had a rapid growth. Now we're about 32,000 residents here in town. So when we're talking about per capita, yes, we might be flatlined in terms of the number of crimes. However, because of the volume of crimes against that population, it's actually gone up. We have more crime. One of the things is that we have certain areas where they actually have more crime because they're more convenient to I-25, to 287, to Colorado 7. So there are some neighborhoods where it has seen a large increase compared to other neighborhoods. So when we're talking about how do we resolve this, it's really about providing the PD what they need. So I've heard through the grapevine that the PD isn't able to come to the board about what they really need. One of the issues is also within the past 2 years, they've had issues on actually attaining the hires that they had budgeted. So it's really providing what they need as the resources instead of sitting there and saying, what can we realistically provide you?
So it is true that there is an increase in crime in Erie, property crime, and that's because there are more properties in Erie, and that lends to more opportunity. The good news is that crime is not growing at the rate of population. I've heard directly from Chief Stewart that she is able to come to the board, and the board has been extremely supportive when she has asked for things. And it's my priority to maintain that good working relationship with the Erie PD. I really appreciate their outreach to that they've developed with residents in just informing us on how to mitigate our own risk by closing our garage doors and locking our car doors and making sure that we're empowered to look out for one another. And it's my priority to support the Erie PD going forward as a trustee.
So I'd be shocked to hear if anyone up here would not support the Erie PD. I certainly do, and I think they're doing a phenomenal job. Yes, nominal numbers are up with population. As we know, rates are down or flat. What I want to communicate most of all is the wonderful relationship that Chief Stewart and the police department have with the current Board of Trustees. The current Board of Trustees has funded pretty much everything that the police department has come to them with, and even to the point that right now we still struggle to get all police positions filled, but it's not for lack of funding. It's for lack of applicants and ability for them to live here. So yes, I 100% support the Erie Police Department.
I think the question's well said. There is a conflict. I'll speak to that first. I live in Collier's Hill, and I had my car broken into, and they opened my garage door, and it was absolutely terrifying. I also heard about the incident in Erie Highlands, and most recently the gas station being looted. But at the same time, I let my kids play in the street. I let them go to the park. I trust my neighbors. I think our neighborhoods are amazing and friendly, and it's a big reason why people live here. So Erie is a safe town in general, but I think we're slipping in our rankings, and therein lies the conflict. So I'm friends with the police officer in a different town, and in no uncertain terms, he explains that they are much better funded than Erie. So I think we need to hire more of them, pay them more, and just increase the funding. And again, it goes back to a budget and revenue generation so that we can do these things and support them more and have them focused on the right things and keep our neighborhoods friendly and safe.
So I think one of the key things that I'm hearing is crime is up everywhere, and I don't think that's an answer for how do we solve this. I think we are currently authorized to have 44 officers for a town of 31 to 32,000 people. That number is derived from calls for service, which I've learned through the chief and through the community policing academy that I'm a part of. I think we need to reassess that. The town is quite large. Residents are spread out pretty far apart. The chief had also asked about getting an outstation at 9 Mile, just because if she's at one side of the town, getting to the other side for a call is extremely hard. So I think we do need to look at how do we provide more to our police department to be able to solve this. You know, they're doing a fantastic job, but they can't be at all places at once. I think it is important that we be diligent and keep an eye on things. I'm encouraged that people are acknowledging that the numbers are trending upward, which again is a troubling thing, but we need to solve it. And I'm thankful for everything the police does, and I want to ensure that as a trustee, I'm giving them all the resources and help I can.
Hi, yeah, so Erie is still one of the safest and most family-friendly places that we can live in this area, and I'm pleased to be living here, and I'm glad that my kids feel safe when they're outside in the street. But still, it is a concern to me that we do have an increase in these property crimes, especially there was an 80% increase in car break-ins, 66% in thefts, and 35% increase in porch piracy. My next-door neighbor even had his truck broken into, and he came to us asking if our camera on the front of our garage could help him to get some information about what had happened. It's very disturbing. I think these are crimes of opportunity, and so we need to look at what we can do. And I think what we can do is crime prevention through environmental design. It's kind of a holistic approach that is increasing awareness with neighborhoods, working with neighborhoods to get a neighborhood watch set up, working with police so that we can have community resource officers, and making sure that they have the funding to do what they need to do. Thank you.
So in the last 15 or so years, the town of Erie has tripled in size of population. We have not tripled in size of the number of crimes. So as was said before, crime is a per capita number. So if you have 6 car break-ins and you go to 8 car break-ins, that's a 33% increase. It sounds much scarier than it really is. And as the number of people are here, as the number of people passing through town increases, you are going to have those crimes of opportunity. And one trend that we have now that we didn't have 15 years ago is the trend of people utilizing technology to catch people in the act. You have cameras on most houses, you have footage being shared among neighbors, you have footage being sent directly to the police department immediately, and a lot of these crimes are actually being solved. So over the last 6 years, every budget request that has come from the police department has been approved. I personally advocated for 2 additional positions for the police department in the last year, and those were both supplied enthusiastically by the Board of Trustees. So we support the police and we believe in what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll go to our next question. I think they're trying to figure this out. Oh, they did. Fantastic. All right, so how do we attract more dental and chiropractor offices in town? Okay, all right. Okay, that's not the question. All right, what are the greatest challenges to our town growing, and what are the benefits? Just to let you know, that really was a real question that was submitted. I just wanted you to know that was submitted. You don't have to answer how we get more. So, Andrew, I believe you're the person to answer this question. What are the greatest challenges to our town growing, and what are the benefits?
So yeah, when you look at the biggest positive and biggest negative about the town, it is our growth. We have grown so substantially in the past 10 to 15 years that it's increased our ability to drive out our sales taxes, our property taxes that we collect, the number of residents here, the items that make it a great place to live. But there are a lot of challenges that have come about from this. We're currently straining all of our infrastructure pieces. Because of that rapid increase in growth, we've actually gotten to a point where we have to service these items earlier than we had expected. Say for our roads, they want to touch the roads, every single piece of road within the next 5 years, if we have the budget to do so. And that's one of the concerns also, the budget that is needed for all of this. because we sunk so much water, our water fund balance into expanding out the infrastructure, our wastewater, our storm drainage, so that we could keep up with the capacity that's needed for this residence. So it's really about managing our expectations, our infrastructure, and our finances.
Some positives of Erie growing so rapidly is that our community is expanding, and we are enjoying services like our restaurants and our beautiful old town that we love. Some challenges are that we need to be able to support those businesses and to recruit and retain diverse new businesses as well. Infrastructure is also a challenge, making sure we can pave roads and pay for our infrastructure. So exciting that 9 Mile, Highway 7, Erie Gateway, Town Center are on the books, and those are serving as a revenue engine that drives money into the town that we're able to reinvest in town. Other ways that we can support local businesses are like through the grant program that in Old Town, by supporting Paripi and Birdhouse and making sure that we are helping those businesses reinvest and create a thriving, exciting community.
Well, I think the challenge is the growth itself and managing that growth. I think we need to be strategic in how we look at building out our community or our commercial areas, so that we don't completely lose the character that Erie has. Having been here for 20 years, there are things I miss, but there are new opportunities. There are new restaurants, and we have the funding available to completely redo Coal Creek Park. That's going to be a beautiful location when it's done. We're expanding the park next to the community center. Those are opportunities because of the growth. And so I just want to take part in guiding that growth with good character and working with the school district to make sure that we have the schools for our children.
So I'll answer the first part. I guess we just keep giving our kids sugar and trying to pick them up all the time. No, I think the challenges are roads in the schools. I think with all these families, super residential growth and not commercial growth or other growth to keep up with it, it's going to overflow the schools and it's overflowed the roads, which we've already seen that. So I think it's out of balance. I think the town finances aren't keeping up with what's been happening in the last couple of years and so quickly. I think we're overly dependent on the impact fees and maybe have neglected some other ways to support the town. But yes, there's lots of opportunity. It's growing an awesome community. This town attracts smart, educated, families that are fun to hang out with, and kids can have other kids to play with and support each other. So I think there's lots of opportunity to bring in stores, services, fun things to do, businesses that maybe didn't want to come here before, but now we have the footprint and the households to support them and know that they'll be successful here.
So I think one of the greatest challenges we face is being competitive with our neighbors. I'm going to give 3 quick anecdotal stories that I've learned on the campaign. First, one of the new buildings downtown that hosts multiple businesses, the tap fee just to hook up to the water in the town is $250,000. That's not competitive. Another, I was speaking with a lady who has a business in Lafayette who wanted to move to Erie. She pays $19 a square foot in Lafayette. It was $59 a square foot in Erie. Another one that I have here was really, talking about the infrastructure, right? So, as we grow, we need to plan ahead. We've all seen the traffic issues that we've had, and a lot of that is because we weren't planning on being this many people this soon. So it's easier to plan ahead now than try to go back after all the development is here and say, oh no, we needed a 4-lane road here. And most importantly, I think we need to maintain our unique identity and respect our history going forward. Erie's a great place. We don't want to lose that.
So I think we've all kind of noticed this when we move into town. I think there's a lot of people that come here because they got a great job somewhere outside of town. And then they were looking for a place that they could afford to live, and they came here and found this great quality of life. Our growth pressure is really driven by the employment centers that are outside of town. And so that's pushing our growth here, but it's been very unbalanced. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have, is this unbalanced growth, where we have so many houses that are going up, but our businesses aren't keeping pace with the housing. And it means that it's spreading our services thin, increasing traffic as people are trying to leave town, and just making it difficult for us to kind of keep pace with that development. But there are benefits to it as well. I mean, there's definitely a potential for diverse businesses because of the growth pressure, because of all the people that live here and all the quality of life issues that we enjoy, the businesses enjoy as well. And so we have a great opportunity there as long as we make our policies friendlier to business. And it also helps the homeowners who get their foot in the door because it helps them to build equity. Thank you.
So what we're experiencing are growing pains. That is not uncommon. The businesses that we have here are threefold what we had 15, 20 years ago. The types of businesses, the variety of businesses that we have just on Briggs Street in Old Town are quite different. We've seen a couple of very dear restaurants close recently, but we've also seen that in the place of Rose, we have Lucille's coming to town. So that's a representation of our business development department doing their job to attract businesses to our community, to make sure they know how many rooftops are here and paying customers that are able to support their businesses. Pinocchio's is working a plan to go where Miners Tavern was. So I missed the Buffalo Burger at Miners Tavern also, but the building is vacant. And so Pinocchio's is exploring an option to move into that location. So as we have attrition with businesses, we have opportunity for us to bring new options to town. And so I think that with that growth, we just have to stay focused and remain a community and patronize the businesses locally first. Thank you.
To me, the biggest challenge right now is that we have a number of public facilities like Town Hall, the police station, the Public Works Department, and the rec center that are all at capacity. And in order to expand those buildings, that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars. The benefits in the growth that we've seen is that more than any time in my time as trustee in the last 4 years, that growth is coming at a very balanced way. That in addition to the residential development, we're getting a really healthy amount of commercial business into town, with Lowe's and King Soopers as a second location at 9 Mile, with the plans that we have at Town Center. We stand to be in a really good position. We have one of the healthiest general fund balances of any neighboring municipality. So in terms of doing a really good job in managing our finances, we're doing a very good job there, but we still have some tens of millions of dollars, big public projects to take on and make sure that we're doing them right, and we're doing right for Town Hall so people can come to work there and service our community properly.
We all need to make sure that we hold this mic up so that they can get it also on the recording. I think people might be able to hear you, but make sure that we can all hear it so when it is recorded, we can hear one another then. All right, the next question. What is your position on future oil and gas development in Erie? Emily, you get us started.
My civic engagement began around oil and gas development near my home when we moved to Erie. I recognized a regulatory gap there and stepped into that gap and advocated for the passage of Senate Bill 181 at the Capitol. And once that was signed into law, I engaged with neighbors and town staff and local elected officials as we redrafted our Article 12, which is our town's oil and gas regulations, ensuring that we applied the strictest regulations we could in order to protect our neighborhoods and our residents. It's important to me that we are electing officials who will enforce those regulations that we wrote, and I will enforce them. I don't subscribe to sacrificial populations. I don't think that it's necessary for us to threaten the health and safety of our residents in order to meet our energy goals. I think we can do that without neighborhood drilling.
The playing field over the last 2 or 4 years has certainly changed with Senate Bill 181 and changes to our own code for reverse setbacks. But as we've seen in Firestone recently with oil and gas attempts to get waivers and exemptions from some of the setbacks, oil and gas is not giving up the fight to develop and drill in our communities. Even in our own election, they have independent expenditure committees that are backing some candidates. So the town needs to remain strong in support of health and safety, and not approve any exemptions or waivers to the existing regulations, and to not rezone to heavy industry zoning areas, which would allow drilling. Thank you.
So my take on the Firestone example is similar, but a little bit different outlook. Oil and gas had a proposal there, but Senate Bill 181 effectively regulates oil and gas at the state level. So that proposal was shot down before it even got to the Firestone town government. So the position for an Erie government, I think Senate Bill 181 effectively bans it in Erie. There's also UDC rules and requirements that need to be followed, and again, make it very difficult for any new drilling to come into Erie. So I promise, just like every regular person, I don't want rigs in anyone's backyard, literally. You would never put residents' health or business health or safety or quality of life at risk ever. That's obvious. When I first moved here, yeah, it was a pretty big issue 6 years ago. But now with all these changes, I just don't think it's a primary concern because it's effectively been banned. I think it might be an issue for, maybe extreme opinions or activists, but we already have that on the board, and I think there's so much more to Erie to talk about and to worry about. Thank you.
If only we had more than 60 seconds. So first of all, I want to give credit where credit's due. I think the regulatory changes that have happened over the past few years are not partisan. Nobody wants oil and gas in their backyard. That's just common sense. I think that it's very unlikely there would be any more developments. There hasn't been for several years. And just to point out, the oil and gas operation near Collier's Hill is actually unincorporated Weld County, for anybody who didn't know that. I wasn't going to mention this, but since it came up, IECs, they operate without any knowledge of the candidates. And so if anybody has knowledge about who they are, then they've been speaking to them, and that's illegal. It's protected by the First Amendment. It's their freedom of speech, so I'll leave it at that. I also want to say that there's a lot of people in the town who work for the oil and gas industry. These are our neighbors, and they're good people. They shouldn't be demonized or treated like they're, just bad people, right? They're just trying to make an honest living like anybody else, and, they're a contributing part of our town. Thank you.
Hi. So as mayor, my primary responsibility will be the health, safety, and welfare of the public. A couple years ago, I've been living in the Kenosha Farm neighborhood. A couple years ago, there was some drilling and fracking on just next to County Line Road in the summer. And at nighttime, it was not loud, but it was annoying, and I had to keep my windows closed all summer. And I like to sleep under the stars, personally. So that, to me, was horrible, and I hated it. And so I get the problem. However, first, I want to tell you, I have no ties for or against oil and gas, in part because as mayor, I need to come to the table with an unbiased position. I cannot bring an activist platform or even my hatred of it to the table because we need to be, first, communicating with heavy industry to give Erie the best negotiating position. Second, and following legal processes so that we don't get sued. And reviewing any development application, whether it's heavy industry, manufacturing, or anything else, based on the merits of the application. And not personal bias. Thank you.
So I'm going to use my minute to give you the facts on what happened in Firestone, because I got this from their Board of Trustees. So there was an application put forth to their planning commission to grant a waiver for 33 wells to be drilled within the setback requirement, within the reverse setback buffer of a dozen homes. The Planning Commission said this is not a good idea. They sent that to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees said, we're going to get 74 acres of land and we're going to get some money from these wells, so we're going to approve the recommendation anyway. That recommendation went to the COGCC, which is the state board, and the state says Senate Bill 181 protects against this type of thing. We're not going to allow it. So the government in the town of Firestone was actually going to support this type of waiver request. I won't allow that to happen in Erie.
I have been working for the last 6 years to make sure that we bring an end to oil and gas exploration in Erie. Having said that, one of my very consistent platform points has been a just and equitable transition to a renewables future. As candidate Kenward mentioned, these oil and gas workers have brought us energy independence. We have stood on their shoulders to build this amazing country, and we owe them a debt of gratitude to transition into other industries. We can put them to work. I've advocated for Representative Buck and other offices, Weld County commissioners, to put these oil and gas workers back to work in aggressively plugging and abandoning the existing stripper and inoperative shut-in wells in Erie so that we can give them great jobs. There's 140 wells that remain to be plugged and abandoned in Erie. We can put those people to work and keep them working as we transition them into other industries. It's so important.
So as a trustee, your number one job is public health and safety. There's been 3 pieces of legislation, as has been described up here: SB 181, UDC Chapter 12, UDC 10614. Personally, I voted in favor for 10614 because that came around where staff presented something to the Planning Commission. We then engaged the public then came to the study session we held, and we ended up having something that was better than what was initially presented to us. The future of oil and gas development in Erie isn't in Erie. The future of oil and gas in Erie is actually around Erie. It is in Weld County. In June of last year, the Board of Trustees had the opportunity to annex in the Hammer property just off of County Road 7, and they denied to do so because they didn't want to have anything to do with oil and gas operations. We have to actually have them within our purview and our jurisdictional boundaries to actually have any say over there. So this is about working with Weld County to resolve the issue for our residents when we have no purview on this.
All right, on to the next question. That question is, the nation is experiencing a great divide over a number of issues, and Erie appears to be no different. What can the town, as a board member or as mayor, do to mitigate this divide we experience here in Erie? Dan, you get to start us.
Oh, thank you. It comes down for me to leading by example and speaking respectfully to people, listening to people, making them understand that they've been heard. I've also knocked on several hundred doors here in Erie and talked to dozens or scores of Erie residents, and I don't think the divide is that strong. It's very strong on social media. I get that. There are a handful of people that push that divide. I think we need to continue to reach out with our community events and encourage interaction. Everybody gets along at the town fair, at the Erie Farmers Market, and it's just a matter of respect and listening to each other. Thank you.
Yeah, Erie's in a unique situation with the county line right down the middle. It's almost like Texas being right next to California, right here in Erie. I think we have a good opportunity, though, to prove that we can get through that. And I agree with the sentiment, being out and about. We're all on the same team here. We should focus on Erie and beat Erie. We have the Erie Tigers High School. We have the parades down in Old Town. I know moving to Erie, I thought that was the coolest thing, just being able to go down there, walk up and down the street, see the parades, see the high school. And let's just keep the focus on things that matter here to us. Maybe ignore some of the influences from the surrounding cities that might have their own desires for Erie, but we can be the example if we just abide by the principles of respect and families first and individual liberties, and just be good neighbors, and we can be the example that we can come together.
So I think this is a really important question. I think a lot of times this division comes from the national level and it trickles down, and it's very easy for us to get caught up in that. I think a lot of the issues that face Erie today actually are nowhere based in partisan politics. We just have to do what's best for the town, period. It's not an us versus them or any of that. We just have to move beyond. When I look out and see all of you today, I don't see any specific groups, I just see neighbors. We are all in this together, we all have to work together, and sometimes it gets nasty on Facebook, but a lot of that stuff goes away, like even Dan said, the community fair, farmers market, you don't see people coming out swinging at those events. When we're all together, we all manage to get along pretty well. So I think we need more of those types of interactions, less Facebook, less Nextdoor, and we'll all move forward fine. Again, thank you for coming out here, because I think that shows that we're all in it together.
Hi, thanks. Back in 2001, I was a Fulbright scholar out in Eastern Europe, and I was right on the line of World War II, like between Latvia and Russia, where people just had obviously some conflicts of opinion on policy. But the research that I was doing there was ethnographic, and I was looking at how people built common ground in a place that was so divided. And I found that so much communication and so much that was happening just on the level of the population, it brought people together. And that communication is key. I mean, that's the most important thing, that we need to be, as a board, communicating with the volunteers and the staff and everybody else, with the residents, and having open lines of communication. But I also found that policy was intentionally driving division, and that it can be very polarizing. And so we have to be careful about the policies that we use so that we don't increase the division.
Erie is a beautiful community that I've enjoyed being a part of. I enjoy being a neighbor here. I enjoy the neighbors that I have. And I find that the divide that is being touted about in this election is mostly made up. We are not a divided town. This town comes together when it counts. The Marshall Fire is a good example of that. That happened over in Boulder County, but we don't care. They are our neighbors. They're part of our Front Range community also. The senior housing development that's right next door, the Victor Smith Apartments, those were built by the Boulder County Housing Authority. That is Weld County. So the line that goes down our town is somewhat arbitrary in a sense, that it divides the geography of who we pay taxes to, but it does not divide our community. We are one Erie community. We are in this together, and we are Erie strong. Thank you.
As a proud Weld County resident of 15 years, I also think that the Great Divide is overstated. In terms of what the town can do, I'll talk first about what the town has done. We hired Alberto de los Rios as our Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Manager. We also have established a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Board, which meets monthly to talk about these kind of issues and to create programming and training and education events within the town to put forth those ideas that we are all different. We come to Erie with a diversity of background, and that needs to be celebrated. It's a beautiful thing. Personally, what I've done last year is I wrote and put forth a proclamation for Pride Month. I also got Pride flags erected at town hall facilities for the first time ever for Pride Month. And we look forward to that kind of diversity of events and programming to continue the education and awareness of everything that makes us different and unique, but together as a community.
So Ken and Van Wittenberg, I'm glad you brought up diversity, because honestly, this is exactly what I see it as us as residents. We already have diversity here in terms of our thoughts, our opinions, our backgrounds. And we have two sides, two different, if you will, factions within town in terms of their thought. So really, if we're looking at this, it starts with us. It starts with us being kinder. It starts with us being more respectful of others' opinions and understanding that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, no matter what it might be. And at the end of the day, we can agree to disagree. as a board, really it's about being open, communicating, being transparent, and doing everything instead of behind closed doors, doing it up front for the light to shine in on. So as the board, what they can do in the future is have more communication, have other ways of transparency, of other ways of public engagement so that individuals can speak their mind, so that we can actually have all these different lines of thoughts and viewpoints brought to light.
Thank you. Oh, Emily, more, sorry.
I agree that the idea that county line is some invisible barrier is really not true. If we looked around the room and tried to sort the room based on who are Boulder County residents and who are Weld County residents, we wouldn't be able to do that unless you know them and you know where they live. So I think it's important that we as a community remember that we are more alike than we are different. And that's a first step. And this brings us back to that foundational value of creating and facilitating a culture in Erie where people feel safe, seen, heard, and valued. If our residents feel valued and safe enough to come to the town board with concerns about things that are happening in town, and we're engaging with our business owners, then we're able to build that community and make sure we're strong and together.
Thank you, you all. All right, the next question. There are certain topics that are important to the community that are out of the town's direct control. We had a lot of questions like this. So this is kind of the summary. For example, water rates, police, school board topics, school board issues that they're facing. Even happiness is, I'm getting feedback. Okay, nope, it's good. We're good. All right, so, and there's even issues about keeping the happiness up of our teachers. There's all sorts of different things that are out of the purvey of the town. However, how do you plan to affect and influence outside entities to address residents' concerns?
Yeah, first of all, I think some of those the town can have an impact on it. I think water rates could be addressed. I think police we've talked about, school board maybe not so much, but schools in general. And I think that's part of my answer too. I think we want to be more open and be receptive and let people come to the table of all variety of industries, of all backgrounds, and be open and listen to them and go into it with an attitude of collaboration, some negotiation, focus on what is going to benefit all of Erie, the entire Erie, the people that live here in all our neighborhoods. So I think when you are more proactive and you have an open attitude and you show the support and you show that you're willing to continue to support them, all of these entities will come to the table and they'll come around and they'll stick around and the word will get out and more businesses and entrepreneurs and investors will come and we'll start to see Erie grow and develop and have some of that commercial growth that we should be having. And I'm excited to do that.
So I agree with Jeff. I think some of those things on the list, we certainly could affect change with water rates and police especially. I think for school board and other things like that, yeah, there are plenty of things that are out of the purview of the Board of Trustees, and that's just the nature of things, right? But I think, for my primary job, I'm in business development, and in business development, one of the key things that matters is relationships. Having open communications and building those relationships, building trust with external stakeholders, and coming up with a shared vision. That's something that I would be very interested in doing, and I think all of us would be, and that's really the answer to how do you impact those changes, right? You're not going to get there without building the relationships and planting the seeds of the ideas that you want, and then also realizing that it's a give and take, right? We have to be able to sometimes give to get the things that we need or we want.
Well, so my husband has always said, the moment you raise your voice, you've lost the argument. And that's a way that we teach our children to try and keep a level head when they're going into any kind of a communication. I think when we're working with regional partners, we need to come in not with fists raised and starting to fight, but try and build strong relationships with the people and give ourselves a stronger negotiating position through those relationships. So it comes back to having positive communication with the people around us. That includes our residents, it includes the county, it includes I guess, multiple counties, right? It includes the industries and the business partners that we have in Erie. And by doing that, we can end up having influence where we thought we might not have had it.
By establishing relationships and leading with both integrity and authenticity, you can determine what the shared interests are and what the shared and common goals are for any particular topic on that list. When it comes to working with the school board, they want to educate as many children as possible. We want to have the best schools as possible. That's a very common interest that's very easy to arrive at a value-based goal for our town. So by having dialogue with these external entities, working with the police department to determine what is common ground, what is it that we need, what are we trying to achieve, and working together to get to a solution, that's how you make impact at things that might be slightly out of your control. I've been doing that for 20 years. I'm very well practiced at it. It's not uncommon territory for me at all.
I'll abuse an old adage to say that no man, woman, nor municipality is an island. Over my 4 years as trustee, I have been so privileged to work with representatives from neighboring municipalities, all the way from Lafayette to Boulder to the city of Denver, Commerce City, Berthoud, and really that is, to me, it's my willingness to sit at a table across from just about anybody, whether it's Weld County Commissioners or residents of Erie or all of you today. And building those relationships on topical areas. For me personally, I spent a lot of time over the last years testifying on behalf of Erie residents at COGCC and AQCC and other legislative hearings to make sure that our concerns are represented at the state and that those benefits come back to Erie for the residents of our town.
So this is really an issue not about communication, but about having an open mind when you're entering negotiations. We have had countless situations within the town where we have come to the table. We have gotten the other entity to the table. However, we have then demanded, instead of trying to attain a win-win situation where it has been an outcome where we didn't get anything done, or we had a result that we didn't really want to begin with. There's other situations where we've gone to negotiating these deals, and for whatever reason, we've just given away the farm. So it's really about communication, sitting down at the table, and actually showing up. There was a story recently on the Erie group saying that the mayor didn't show up at the St. Vrain. It was a meeting of the mayors. Those should be priorities. Those are items that all members of the Board of Trustees should know about, and if the mayor isn't able to attend, somebody else is able to attend in her place.
A lot of the issues ahead of Erie are regional and should be addressed regionally. Things like affordable housing. Newly on our list of concerns maybe is that mitigating our wildfire risk. Transit, making sure that we are at decision-making tables, with RTD, that we're working with neighboring municipalities to address these issues. It's important that we are working collaboratively with our neighbors and that we are addressing our issues and we have a good working relationship with our neighboring municipalities.
A lot of it comes down to developing relationships, and that can take some time. I'm thankful that I have relationships within town with current board members, prior board members that I can go to and get an introduction if I need to, and meet the right people, and then sit down with those people and discuss our common interests and where to go. In my years as an accountant, I've delivered good news and bad news to management, and had to discuss any number of issues. So yeah, it's really the development of relationships, and that's what I would rely on. Thank you.
The next question. To what extent do you believe the town of Erie needs to embrace green technology and sustainability? Do you have a plan for how our town can be more open and supportive of green technologies in the future?
So I really like this question because I think it is really important to note that as much as this issue is portrayed as being partisan, it's actually not. I think green energy is something that we all agree is something we need to be working towards, but we also need to realize there is no silver bullet when it comes to energy. Green energy has its own faults as well. Look at the mining operations that is required for the batteries. There's a lot of pollution there. There's a lot of child labor. Nothing is perfect. But I think what really matters right now is that we're working towards it, and while we're doing that, we maintain diversity in our energy options. I think that our town should definitely be investing in that path, but again, with the understanding that there's still a ways to go, right? When the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, they're not doing a whole lot for you, and then even when they are, how are we storing that energy effectively? Are we using batteries that are bad for the environment too? Again, these are things that we all need to work on together. We should be working in that direction. The town should be supportive of it, but we also need energy diversity.
So I kind of agree with some of what he was just saying. There's a lot of benefit to green technologies, and I'm glad to see those things rolling out. A lot of people have embraced those on their own decision. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that when we see that there's a good thing, that we want to impose it on everybody. And it's not the town government's role to be doing that imposition. And where it runs into a problem is if we're dictating to developers exactly what they can and cannot do, think about things like going 100% gas-free in homes, it raises the costs for the residents. And we're already looking at an affordability issue with housing. So if we're dictating a lot of requirements to the developers for these kinds of things, it makes the housing prices even higher. So we end up with an additional problem. Thanks.
As you can tell by the number of Teslas driving around Erie, people are interested in green technology. You have a hard time finding which one is yours, I'm sure, if you drive one. And I believe that some of the initiatives that we've had in town, whether there be initiatives to try to find solar centers in town for us to maybe offset some of the consumption that we ourselves utilize, for example, at the Erie Community Center, or whether it's working with Excel Energy to maybe take over some of the street lights that we have in town to replace them with LED lights that are a lot less burdensome, or whether it's some of the advancements that we've made at the Erie Recycling Center. If you notice, there's a new compactor so that you can drop off a lot more cardboard without us having to be full up and reject loads. So we're making strides in that area. When it comes to green energy itself, I noticed that the oil field service workers that I know in town, they don't work in the oil fields in Erie. They work very far away from town. So finding ways for them to engage in some of the new technologies that may be local, that may be benefiting them directly.
As the board liaison to the Sustainability Advisory Board for the last 4 years, it's been my privilege to execute on the Sustainability Master Plan. By merely adopting the 2021 building codes, we will make great progress toward green technologies, whether it's making homes solar ready, whether it's having electric vehicle charging stations inside your garage, whether it's doing community or utility scale solar installations in town. We have an incredible sustainability department. We have an incredible lead in Tyler Kessler. The members of the Sustainability Advisory Board are amazing, and it's my privilege and honor to have worked with them and to continue bringing forward those projects. The one I'd really like to mention is the Wee Cottages at Erie Commons is the first fossil fuel free development in Erie. Not because we told them to do it, but because it's cheaper. It was cheaper for that developer to omit natural gas lines to each one of those homes. And it'll be cheaper for those residents in the long term. Amazing output. It's a wonderful outcome.
So we have a number of initiatives that the town has moved forward on. Some have been small, some have been very large initiatives. Some have been initiatives that haven't been said to be initiatives, but really were initiatives. We have a lot of EV charging stations around town. They cost the town money to put those in. And anytime you go by them, they're not being used. The reason is because individuals have them inside of their homes because we have a very high median household income here in Erie. So they can afford to actually put one inside of their house, meaning the town-sponsored and paid-for items aren't being used. So really the question becomes, at what cost? Another thing that the town has done is water conservation. In the spirit of water conservation, they re-rated the water rates. They made it so that they were de-incentivizing individuals from using water. What has that done? It has made it so that all of our residents here in town are effectively paying a higher rate than they used to be. Even though in the spirit it was to reduce it, they made all of us have the burden of the consequences placed on our shoulders.
Hello, it's on. Okay. I do support the town's green energy efforts. I'm encouraged by things like the turbine at the water treatment center that generates power for that building. Things like the proposed floating solar array at the wastewater treatment facility that we just upgraded the infrastructure on. These are ways to bring more power into town and make them sort of self-sustaining. I also am encouraged by things like our turf replacement program that we have going on in town right now, where residents can qualify for up to $2,000 for replacing water-thirsty turf in their yards. I think it's important, and something that the town can do to support our own efforts is to make sure that our ordinances reflect our priorities. Right now, our municipal code says that we require 75% of our front yards to be live plants. That's not reflective of that intention to replace your turf. So there are some simple things we can do and some really well thought out things we can do with some good planning.
Out knocking on doors last week reminded me of two things. We got a lot of wind and a lot of sun. I'm going to stretch the term technology a little bit and talk about RTD, because a lot of us here in this room pay RTD taxes. And what do we have to show for it? 2 bus stops on one route. And RTD can be a very green option, especially if we get light rail. I would love to see light rail come up to Erie Gateway out on the I-25. But even buses, gas-powered, diesel-powered buses, 4 or 5 people on a bus is better than 4 or 5 people driving their own car. And that also reduces traffic. So I can consider that to be very, very green. The transition to green power or green technology is not going to be overnight. And so we have to start somewhere. We've started with EV stations, and we can hit RTD as well.
I think it's important to remember Erie is a small town, so I think we can try to do our part, but let's remember that this is a much bigger issue than our little town here. So I think at a higher level, I think the capitalist approach is the best route. For example, I myself drive an electric vehicle, and I love it, but I love it also a large part because of the tech and because of the self-driving. So I'm a huge fan of Elon too, by the way. So I like his approach. You make it competitive, you make it cheaper or better in a competitive environment, and then it will take off on its own without the government forcing it or mandating it or requiring it. I think we've seen what happens if the government tries to impose too much into things like this. You see gas prices soaring, we've lost our energy independence. That makes food more expensive, heat more expensive. Everything on earth is now more expensive. So there's an inflation concern to that, and I think especially now we wouldn't want to do anything that would add burden or costs onto our residents and our people that are already struggling with a lot of cost challenges.
Thank you, you all. Next question. Does the board or the mayor need to be more accessible to the general public? If so, how should this happen? If, in your opinion, it is already adequate enough, what processes will you continue to implement to ensure this interaction continues?
Yeah, I think the the mayor and the board should be more accessible to the public, especially more accessible than it has been over the last couple of years. I mean, the idea of having most of our meetings on Zoom has made it really easy to hide behind a screen and not really be interacting with the public. You know, on the Planning Commission, I've been on the Planning Commission for 6 years, and there have been times when we have a full room. There are people that come in and they want to raise their voices. My biggest concern when they do come in is that sometimes they're coming in when it's already too late to have accomplished something. And I want to have them more knowledgeable earlier about what's happening in their neighborhoods and in the surroundings, so that when they do approach us, they're approaching us at a time when they have more power. And I think that that's part of transparency and just kind of educating the public about where we're at and what's happening in the future of Erie.
I like this question because I enjoy community, and I think that building community is a hands-on job. It's something you have to do face-to-face. Now, I don't envy that for the last 2 years, the board has been operating during a pandemic. And so a lot of the instances where we would have town events or we would have meetings, those things have been pushed to virtual options as a consolation. And I believe that going forward, now that we exit the pandemic, hopefully it won't come back, that we're able to continue to do those face-to-face activities and have more community building opportunities so that the public can get face-to-face with the mayor and the board of trustees. We are very accessible, I would say. As a current trustee, I get emails often, daily, from residents about issues that concern them. And so I do interact with the public quite often, and I think that will continue. I know that will continue. And we'll only be able to increase that cadence as we move into the summer, into our normal event season.
The COVID pandemic has been incredibly difficult for everybody, and certainly for interaction between residents and government. One thing that I'm incredibly proud of is that I'm the only member of the Board of Trustees over the last 4 years that has attended every single regularly scheduled meeting. I show up to every meeting. In terms of how this should change in the future, I think this is something that we really should look at as we go to home rule. That everybody that's vying for a trustee position up here is looking to get a job that pays $300 a month. Is that fair? I've had people insist that trustees shouldn't be paid at all, but that limits the availability of this really important work to people that would actually need to get paid something like a living wage in order to do this work. I think we have a unique opportunity with our Home Rule Charter Commission to really ask the residents and to work together as to what is it that the job of a trustee should be and how should they be compensated, and is that equitable and correct for our community?
So when we all run as candidates, we know exactly what this position is. This position is more or less it's a volunteer position because there isn't really much pay that the mayor or the board of trustees receive. But that doesn't stop many individuals from trying to request your vote for office. Individuals who are board of trustee members, they are servants of and for the residents. They are the elected individuals that are supposed to be the voice of the residents. 3 things come to mind when I see this question: transparency, openness, and honesty. In the past 4, 6, 8 years, that has been extremely lacking at Town Hall, to the point where we are constantly in the news about this for one scandal or another. That really isn't conducive for us as residents or town staff, or let alone the other individuals who might not be complicit in this. So really, it's about having this open nature with the residents, having this communication, and then if you have transparency initiatives like a 2018 budget transparency that was released in 2018 and then stopped being produced in 2018.
Time's up.
So this comes back to that foundational value. Everyone needs to be safe, seen, heard, and valued, so that they can come to the town and feel like they can engage and know that they'll be respected and heard. Before pre-COVID, I used to attend once-a-month coffees at the rec center. It was coffee with the mayor and trustees. And it was really interesting to get to meet some of your neighbors that you wouldn't get to meet otherwise and hear some of their concerns. Things that were brought up was oil and gas development in neighborhoods, traffic, transit, lack of transit availability, questions about composting. And so I'm just trying to remember what these engagements were about. That's so important, that engagement. And yes, I think that the town government should be transparent and accessible, and I would be happy and thrilled to facilitate that connection.
I used to attend some of those coffees with the mayor and trustees as well over the years, and those were great. And I would commit to continuing that sort of a tradition or an event. The 3 minutes of public comment that an individual gets at a board of trustees meeting is very stale because it's not interactive. They state their case and then they have to sit down. So. I'll take my $300 and spend it on coffee. I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The board needs to be more accessible, and they also need to listen too when people come to them and try to talk to them. So for starters, you could probably end the state of emergency. The current board went 2 years hiding behind Zoom calls, which was extremely frustrating. I'd try to log in, and the first thing they would do was turn all the cameras off and have a backroom secret meeting, like where we have no idea what's going on. So it's unfortunate that happened. And to counter the fear of COVID, my business has 150 people in it all day, every day, and we've been open for 2 years, and we've not had any harm to anybody. So, and God bless the teachers for being brave enough and smart enough to go in and live and work in the real world. So, yeah, it's been unfortunate that's happened, but I love the idea of being accessible, being open. I plan on being a representative and a voice to the people that are currently not being heard or listened to or being represented, to be quite frank.
So I'm going to do something a little unconventional here. How many of you were essential workers? Raise your hands. Essential workers. You had to go into the office. Okay, so if you had to go into the office, but your board of trustees and mayor didn't have to, what does that say about our local government? I think we should be in person. I think we should be accessible. The executive sessions need to really be reserved for things that involve personal matters, not for any other things. It's our duty to be there for you. You know, whether you want to tell us we're doing an awful job, whether you want to say great things, whether you have a question, we should be there all the time. We need to be responsive to emails. When I was out canvassing, this came up a couple of times. People said, hey, I've tried to email the board and I've got nothing back. Or in some cases, I got a one-word response that just said no. That type of thing won't fly. And if I'm elected as a trustee, you can bet on the fact that I will be there working every single time we have to have a meeting, and I will respond to your emails when I receive them. Thank you.
Okay, we're into our last 30 minutes. Hang in there, you all. All right, next question. Homeworld seems to be a consistent issue brought up in local government discussions. Over time, it appears that people have changed their mind on how to respond to this. What are the key issues that need to be in place for this to be a wise move for the town of Erie to make for its future? Justin, I believe we start with you.
Okay, this looks like a leading question, but I'll try my best with it. So home rule is a major transition of government. That is true. However, it is something that is very commonplace across the state of Colorado. 93% of Coloradans live in a home rule municipality. We are a statutory town. There is a judicial process that you go through to make the transition from statutory to home rule. It is led by the voters. The charter is written by commissioners that are elected, not the current elected officials. They're new elected commissioners that you would elect as voters that would lead us through that transition. The city of Eagle, Colorado, has a very informative website that kind of shows the path to home rule. And I think that one of the major things we would need to do is to increase awareness of what that process looks like, what it'll take, and continue to be transparent as we have been with what that transition would mean to our voters.
To me, the key thing that needs to be in place is the Home Rule Charter Commission. So let me use this time to ask anybody and everybody that's listening, if you consider yourself an informed, engaged resident that cares about Erie, please consider applying for the Home Rule Charter Commission. It's going to be between 9 and 20 Erie residents who will hash it out over a period of 12 months and come up with a Home Rule Charter based on the charters from Monument and Eagle and the City of Loveland, and embrace what makes Erie unique and allow us to take the things that have already worked in other municipalities, use them as a bedrock, and to celebrate what it is that we want Erie to be for its future.
So I have been extremely vocal about home rule, and it actually goes along the lines of this question. The one biggest thing that needs to be really brought back to town hall is trust. We just got through a question about the trust, openness, the transparency. Trust was the number one reason why individuals opposed home rule. Trust of the actual elected officials, as well as trust of the community members for the number one reason why people were unsure on whether home rule would be good or bad for the community. There's a number of things that the town has to do to get ready for home rule. Home rule is meant for municipalities that have exceeded their already currently provided statutory abilities. Not just because we are at 32,000, not just because we are at the largest statutory municipality in the state, but because we need that as our next form, because we need to get stuff done, and I don't see that having been done yet.
Home rule is a form of government that gives power back to residents by enabling residents, empowering them to write our charter and really prioritize what's important to Erie. It's important for balanced growth and sustainable budget moving forward. And I think it begins with, that really important educational outreach to make sure that our residents feel like they understand what the home rule process is, that the whole thing is transparent. And so then the next step will be that it goes to voters. Do you want to go to home rule? I think that educational piece on the front end is really important so that you can make an informed decision at the ballot in November. Should the voters decide that we should become a home rule and accept that charter, then it is paramount that the Board of Trustees is supporting town staff so that we can mature into that growth, so that there are the additional staff that the town would need to be a home rule municipality. That's so important.
The number one issue for going to home rule is education and helping the townspeople understand exactly what's involved. I'm not going to sit up here and preach about why I may or may not think we should go to home rule or why. I have been on the fence about it and changed my mind over time. I do agree that trust is the issue. The Board of Trustees needs to trust its residents, who are very intelligent, very well educated, to educate themselves on what home rule is and what it is not, and allow them to vote for their future. It's not a power grab. If we're all the Board of Trustees, when it comes around, we go away, unless the voters vote us back in. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, to answer the question directly, for this to be a wise move, I'd like to see one, a greater commercial base that would recoup the costs of moving to home rule, and two, assurances for more representation of the people. So for part one, commercial base, I keep hearing we can tax hotels and marijuana stores, of which we have neither right now. To tax them, also, you would have your own tax department. So that's more headcount, more people, more recurring costs, a bigger expense. You have to put them somewhere. And we don't have the commercial base right now to pay for all of that. So that's a gigantic cost, and I don't know who's paying for it. Certainly not current people or current businesses. We cannot afford that. Number two, assurances for more representation. The charter, yes, it can be written by citizens, but it can be written to give more power to the mayor or more power to the town administrator. And those two things would be absolutely awful for this town, in my opinion. So I'd like to see maybe some ward creation, some assurances that all sides will be represented, and that more power would be for the people, and that would be a wise decision.
So I think first and foremost, there's a misconception that just because you have X number of people, you have to be a home rule government. I believe that if you have balanced growth and you can tax the things that Mr. Haverkate said, then yes, it absolutely makes sense. You can actually get the benefits of being home rule. But as it stands today, we do not have those things that we need to go tax. Collecting and levying taxes is one of the main differences between a home rule charter and what we're currently on today. One of the voters that I was communicating with sent me the Lakewood charter for their home rule government. And as I read through it, I thought, this looks very familiar. This essentially is what we have today with a couple of addendums. The cost of going to home rule was nowhere to be found on any of the home rule surveys that were sent up by the town, and I think that it's really important that we acknowledge that it costs money. It takes time. We need to increase the size of our government. We need to have places to put them. You're talking about spending millions of dollars forever in perpetuity to do something that doesn't really give you any benefit right now. In the future, when we have those things, absolutely, let's do home rule. I'm not opposed to it then, but for now, I am.
One of the biggest challenges that we run into in a leadership position is staying focused on purpose and getting rid of all of the noise. Home rule there's a democratic process, it's a policy. We can bring a policy to the table and we can debate the pros and cons of a policy, but what was the problem that we are trying to resolve? I feel like right here we have an example of a solution that's looking for a problem. I have not yet heard a reason that we need to go to home rule, but we're looking at a policy that's potentially going to cost our taxpayers a lot of money and is going to increase the size of government, which then we've already heard the building is already pressing people to the wall, so we need more buildings. It could be potentially very expensive for our taxpayers, but I don't see it as a solution to an actual problem. It's just a policy.
Okay, our last question. With rising home prices, the conversation has arisen about providing affordable housing. What do you see as the pros and cons of Erie adopting some affordable housing areas? Christian, you start.
So the pros is that our police officers, our teachers, and our grocery store cashiers could actually live in the town that we call home and enjoy all the amazing things that Erie has to offer. We could reduce traffic on our roads. We can reduce pollution that enters the environment. We can make general life happier for people that want to and deserve to live in Erie. When the way that the question is worded, affordable housing areas, I think that is misleading. I don't think that affordable housing belongs in the corner of town. I value everyone that wants to call Erie home, and I want them to be integrated into every single community so that they can enjoy Erie. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is, the bottom part is misleading a little bit, but that is actually something that has been discussed when your board actually had the study session where they were talking about the credit that goes from developers to the town so that it can be used in other areas. So that is something that is on the table. So currently our median household income is $124,000 here in Erie. The median sale price of a home is $750,000. So that means that an individual to actually come here into the town, first-time home buyer, $37,500 just to close, and then they're paying $3,600 per month for their mortgage. And then you have a conventional buyer, $144,000 to close, and then they're sitting there with over $3,000 on their mortgage. That doesn't sound very affordable to me. The current plan that the town adopted is actually Boulder County's plan, which is 30% median household income as well as deed restriction. I think we need to work with the development community to say, here is our goal, here is our plan, how do we get there, what are the strategies, what have you done in other communities, and actually have a plan to get to that point.
So in 2000, in the comp plan update, it was recognized that Erie needed a plan for inclusionary housing, and it was recommended that we adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance. That was done in 2021. And it wasn't even an ordinance, not an ordinance yet, it's a goal. 12% of our housing stock by 2035 should be affordable. So what this did was enabled the planning department to apply for and receive a grant from the Department of Local Affairs. That grant is being used to do a study to understand exactly what the need is in front of Erie. Erie's need for inclusionary housing includes our workforce, our teachers, our police force, grocery store workers, my college graduate daughters who would love to be able to move closer to their hometown and need that entry-level housing. This is why it is so important for Erie to address affordable or inclusionary housing. Staff is scheduled to bring a recommendation for an ordinance in June, and it'll be important for this next board to address that.
I honestly can't think of any cons to having affordable housing. We're not talking about building slums or projects. We're talking about housing that is attainable for our residents, housing that's attainable for our first responders, for our teachers, for our children who move out of the home, for our seniors. We're talking about creating a diversity of housing options for people, and it's a multifaceted, long-range issue that we need to start addressing. And I think the first step in addressing it is getting a board of trustees that acknowledges it as a real problem that needs attention. Thank you.
I think rising home prices probably could have been included in that one question where it's like, what can Erie do about it? It's a macroeconomic issue, right? Seen around the whole country. It's tied to inflation and interest rates, national level things far from Erie's control. When you say affordable housing, I think that means subsidized, right, by someone. So ultimately, it's going to be taxpayers or consumers. So I don't think it guarantees anything about workers coming here and working in Erie. I think that's a possibility, but it's not a guarantee. So I'd prefer to focus on cutting bureaucracy, cutting red tape, cutting government involvement that just ultimately drives up costs everywhere. So I think single-family homes in Erie aren't intended to be the first buyers. They're 500,000. So I think let's offer other housing types where people can get in, get some equity, work their way up as they grow in their life. I think that's kind of the American way anyways, right? So I do feel for the young people that are looking to buy a home, but we all go through that, and I think there's great ways that they can afford bigger houses later on in their lives.
So there's a lot to say on this subject, but really quick, I'm just going to kind of dive in and say there's two possible meanings to affordable housing. One is you have a diverse type of house that's sold at fair market value, and the other is it's subsidized, sold below market value. We should definitely be doing the first. For the second, I've actually spoken to some people who work in affordable housing, and I asked them, if I buy a house that's worth $500,000 and I pay $300,000 for it, can I sell it in 6 months and get the profit? You cannot. It is deed restricted. You're not building equity. Second question is, how do you sell it below market value? Oh, well, the developers will get a tax credit. Okay, great. So now who's paying that tax? The answer is all of us. So we have people here in all different phases in their life in Erie, from child to retired. They moved here years ago, and their property values have risen, their taxes have gone up. What I care about is keeping Erie affordable for the people who live here today. I don't want to increase their tax burden. And I also disagree that we should just plop affordable housing anywhere. We don't want to place additional strain on our infrastructure. It's not going to make anyone happy to include the people who live there if they're in the middle of town and now we have gridlock everywhere. Thank you.
I want to start by clarifying something that I think is very important. We already have teachers, first responders, people on fixed incomes living in our community, and they're living in their homes, and we need to keep the cost of living at a reasonable level so that we don't push them out. We've already heard some of the pros and cons of this. When my husband and I moved into the area, he had gotten a job in the Boulder area, and we couldn't afford to live over there. We found a neighborhood that we could afford to live in Erie. We can't afford to live in every neighborhood in Erie. So there are differences even within Erie, but a lot of us are are here because it's the affordable workforce housing for the employment centers around us. I think the best thing we can do is to increase the attainable housing, different types of housing, and make it possible for people to get started. The worst thing we can do is to increase the cost of housing by dictating things to developers, and also by subsidizing housing that is a dead end for the people that buy it. It limits their equity, it doesn't do them any favors, and it spreads our town resources thinner.
So affordable housing, attainable housing, those are nuanced subjects that it sounds like not everyone on this panel really understands how they work. And I'm a little frustrated with hearing that it's not my problem. These people live here now. It's because they got here when it was affordable. Home prices have tripled, salaries have not. And there are statewide, countywide housing programs that serve to provide workforce housing. All of our neighbors, all of the neighboring communities have such ordinances. We do not. Erie's a trendsetter in a sense that we have not adopted an actual ordinance. We have a goal of 12%. And so partnering with outside entities such as county, state, and federal entities that provide affordable paths and that allow for an approach that is appropriate for Erie, because our solution may be different than others. I think that is the way to provide workforce housing for the small business owners who cannot find employees.
Okay, thank you all. Now time for closing remarks. So we will start. Everyone's had the opportunity to start. I want the two mayoral candidates to go first. So Kelly, and then Justin, and then we will work our way down. So, okay.
Well, first, I want to thank the Rotary Club and Calvary Bible Church for hosting this event. It was wonderful to have it as an in-person event, and this has been really an enjoyable experience, and they brought it together in such a short amount of time. It was a huge undertaking, and I appreciate that effort. I appreciate all you for coming and for hearing us. It's been wonderful campaigning and getting to know so many people in the Erie community and learning the concerns that they have for our neighborhood. And I really feel like it's been a refiner's fire, so I think everybody up here has learned a lot through the experience, and I know I have. We love our town. I love this town. I look forward to serving, and thank you. I'll just end by saying, please vote Kelly Zuniga for mayor.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks to the Rotary. Thanks to Calvary. This is the third forum we've had, the second face-to-face opportunity, and I appreciate any opportunity we have to get in front of voters. And so I think that knocking doors, talking to voters, hearing what's important to you, that's what's important to me as a candidate for your mayor. I would like to serve this community. I would like to continue the sense of small town that brought us here. We came here for 18 months, 13 years ago. So that goes to show how much we care about this community, how invested we are, how invested I am in each of you. So thank you for taking your time on a Sunday evening to come and spend listening to us drone on about subjects that may or may not be important to you. Hopefully they are. Thanks again, Justin Brooks for mayor. Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you all so much for coming, for Andy and Calvary for organizing. Participation in the democratic process is one of our fundamental rights, and if anything, I just need to say, everybody, please, 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 if you can do all of us one favor, go home and find somebody that's not in your house and remind them to vote. Everybody should have their ballot in the mail by now. Please, please, please remind your friends and family that live in Erie, please vote. Go online, look at the Yellow Scene candidate interviews, look at eLife's candidate interviews, look at the Daily Camera, look at the recording from the Being Better Neighbors Forum. Go to the candidate websites, ask questions, continue to get involved. Voting is such a fundamental right. I thank you so much for participating in the democratic process, and it would be my privilege to serve you in my second term as trustee. Thank you.
So I also want to convey my gratitude to the Rotary as well as Calvary. Also, all of you in the audience here, thank you for coming out tonight. I know you spent your Sunday nights, probably had some better things to do than to listen to us talk, but thank you. So you've heard a lot of questions asked. You've heard a lot of great responses from all the individuals up here. That's the great thing about our elections. We have our residential base here in town it's very intelligent individuals and a lot of individuals who are committed to the community and want to stand up and be your voice. When you think about how we're going to be moving in the next 2, 4, 8, 10, and further out years, where do you see Erie? Where do you personally see us? So personally, I'm running for change. I want to see change at Town Hall. I want to see everything that we know and love about Erie just become that much better instead of staying with the status quo. So humbly and respectfully, I request your vote and support, and thank you all again for coming out tonight.
I echo the gratitude. Thank you for being such gracious hosts, the Rotary and the Calvary. This is such an important election as we consider our transition to home rule and finalize developments of the town center and 9 Mile and start on Erie Gateway. And it's so important that we're addressing the housing crisis and streamlining processes for business. All of this on a foundation of creating a culture where people feel engaged and will come to the town, and that the town government is transparent and accessible. It would be my honor to facilitate that relationship as trustee, and I ask for your vote for Emily Baer for trustee. Thank you.
I'd like to circle back real quick to some points I would have liked to have made but didn't. With respect to crime and our Erie Police Department, we can help by increasing our neighborhood watches and becoming a more attentive community and supporting our co-responder program. As far as finances go, our town is on very stable ground. Our general fund is funded 45% approximately by sales taxes and 35% by property taxes, not by developers, not by impact fees, not by water. Finally, when you walk out of here tonight, please celebrate our diversity, not our divisiveness. And summer's coming up. Please, please conserve water. And please also vote Dan Hoback for trustee. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again to the Rotary and the Calvary Church for hosting. I'm glad everyone could make it out and hear the contrasts and approaches that we have here. I believe as a whole, Erie wants moderation in town government, and I hope they can see that's not what we've had in the last 2 to 4 years, and will support some diversity in thought and representation. I mean, I'm just a dad, I'm a regular guy, I'm trying to run a business, I'm here for my kids and all kids and their futures. I want the government to focus on doing what's best for Erie to set us up for a successful future that's lets our kids and businesses and everybody thrive in the future, and not overstep their bounds and enforce things onto us and tell us how to live. So if elected, yeah, I promise I'll stand up for the kids and families. I'll support our small businesses, local businesses, keep the money here in Erie, bring in more of them, and make sure the government's focused on the appropriate things and working for the people. I believe that's what most of you guys want. That's something that's good for everybody. So here's your chance. Vote for me, vote for us, and thanks again for coming out.
So I want to echo the gratitude tonight. You've been just an exceptional audience. You've been through the marathon with us, so thank you. Thank you to our hosts, the Rotary Club and the Calvary Baptist Church. Also, thank you to my wife, who's not listening to me right now, but that's okay. This has been exhausting and challenging for our family, as I'm sure it has for all of the candidates, so I want to thank them all as well for going through this. We may not always agree on everything, but it takes a lot to go do this, and thank you to my wife for not coming out swinging sometimes. She's been tempted. I really think this is a key point in Erie's future right now. There's a chance to change things, and if we don't make this change now, we're going to hit a point of no return. We've had a lot of housing development, but we haven't had a lot of businesses, and if we fill up all the land with houses, our opportunity will be gone. Now is the time to make change. Please vote for me, Ryan Kenward, for trustee. Check out my website, kenwardforerie.com. Again, thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for providing some very informed answers to our questions. The date for the ballots is April 5th. You can mail it in now, but probably by the time April 1st shows up, I would not do that. You can drop it off at any point at the down at the town hall. There's that little box right out in front. So you can, what's that? Not the rec center. No, not only the town hall. The ballot drop off, let's see, so they need to be in by 7 p.m. on election day, which again is April 5th. Voters do have the opportunity to not only vote for 3 trustees and 1 mayoral candidate, they also have some variety of different issues that are on the ballot. So I encourage you to look into those issues yourself. Here are 2 QR codes. One of them's for eLife, one is Yellow Scene. So if you want to learn more about each of the candidates, you're welcome to hop up there and you take a picture with your phone and go to those sites. I believe every candidate here has a website, if I remember correctly. You can learn more about each candidate there as well. So with all that, we thank you all for attending. This was short notice. I do know some people heard about it, some people did not. Thank you for coming out because that's part of what democracy is all about. To hear different ideas about how people have ideas of how to grow our town. And again, we thank you very, very much. Rotary members who are here, I've seen a couple leave behind. I have 3 right here. Please raise your hands. Thank you guys. There we go, another one back there, 4. And Raphael, he's a good friend of mine.